Alright, it's been 2 weeks since we had an LGBT awareness period, and I'm sure you've all been on the edge of your seat just awaiting the next opportunity to reflect on LGBT visibility. And if this is you, I've got fantastic news. Today is the start of Pride Month, which means we've got 30 full days ahead of us to fixate on LGBT everything. And I'm hoping that you could sense the fake enthusiasm in my voice. Last year, one of my daughter's friends enthusiastically asked her what our family would be doing to celebrate Pride Month. My daughter just kind of looked at her blankly because, well, we don't really do anything to celebrate Pride Month. In our household, we're not anti-Pride, but we're not exactly pro-Pride either. While I appreciate Pride's place in history and the important work that was done to bring LGBT people to mainstream acceptance, like many celebrations, what exists today is a highly commercialized shell and bears little resemblance to its humble beginnings. It has become about corporations pushing Pride on television and through all of their marketing and printing rainbow flags and transgender overlays on merchandise of all shapes and sizes. But beyond commercialization, recently we've also reached a point where individuals and organizations are being accused of being homophobic or transphobic simply for respecting to choose not to participate in Pride celebrations. And this is a problem for two reasons. First, because choosing not to celebrate something does not mean you're against it. And secondly, because even if you are against it, in a democratic society, we allow individuals agency to not subscribe to any particular ideological position. Last month, I made a video about Norwich County's decision to not fly a pride flag on their municipal flagpole. Norwich is a small farming community in rural Ontario, and they've had a few LGBT flare-ups over the past few years. This year, the councillors decided that the cleanest path forward was to simply not involve themselves in flying anything beyond federal, provincial, and municipal flags in order to sidestep the identity politics controversies. Since that video, we've had more pride flag controversies at other school boards, including Niagara District School Board and York Catholic District School Board, along with a councillor in Pickering who indicated that she won't be participating in their municipal pride ceremonies. Each of these situations have played out in similar matters where people have been accused of the phobias simply for not participating. I won't repeat everything from that video, but the Coles notes was that giving people the option to fly a pride flag is freedom, but compelling anyone to fly a flag and then accusing them of the phobias if they don't is both authoritarian and symbolically meaningless. And if you want to discuss pride flags more, I will put the link in the comments. So, Pride Month. I get the argument that maybe it's important to have a day to celebrate diverse identities and to highlight both how far we've come and where there is still progress to be made. But many people are understandably getting a little bit disillusioned with the number of LGBT awareness periods that have come to take center stage in the last few years. Have you noticed that there are quite a few awareness days? There isn't a definitive list, and new ones seem to proliferate as quickly as bunny rabbits reproduce. But here's the basic rundown of the ones that receive international recognition. Our calendar starts in the third week of February with Aromantic Spectrum Awareness Week. This is followed by Transgender Day of Visibility on March 31st, International Asexuality Day on April 6th, International Day of Pink on the second week of April, and Lesbian Visibility Day on April 26th. We then celebrate International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia, and Transphobia on May 17th, and Agender Pride Day on May 19th, which leads nicely into Pride Month for the entirety of June. July brings International Non-Binary People's Day and Drag Day, and we then get to take a quick breather to get ready for October, which trust me, we are gonna need. Because October brings LGBT History Month, International Lesbian Day, National Coming Out Day, International Pronoun Day, Asexual Awareness Week, Gender Visibility Week, and Intersex Awareness Day. And for those who are counting, that is more than one day a week for the entirety of October. Well then remember that we haven't devoted a day solely to transgender individuals since March, so we'll give them the entirety of November for Trans Awareness Month. This is celebrated with Transparent Day on the first Sunday of the month, Transgender Awareness Week on the third week of the month, and Transgender Day of Remembrance on November 20th. Now, I'm not here to say that any one of these awareness periods is bad per se, but does it not seem a tad unbalanced that we have this many days and months devoted to LGBT awareness? I'll remind you that we have only one day a year where we honor those who died to fight for democracy, one day where we reflect on the importance of responsible environmental stewardship, and one day where we celebrate groundhog cognition. And at least those days still exist because we are increasingly seeing traditional holidays and national celebrations being suppressed by our institutions. We have a day to celebrate our unity as a country, but in the last few years, some people have advocated very hard to cancel it. This past year also saw controversies surrounding Valentine's Day and Halloween as some school boards moved to de-emphasize them in the name of equity, health, and student harm reduction. The barrage of new days of awareness, combined with the stripping away of so many traditional celebrations, is not making some people feel very positive towards the LGBT movement. And it becomes so easy for people to take that frustration out on individuals like me amid the crossfire. I question whether these frequent awareness periods are actually helping achieve any of their objectives, and instead might be causing more harm than good. And this all comes down to how centrally we hold our gender and sexual identities. Look, I'm transgender. That is part of my identity. But it isn't the core of who I am, and it isn't even the biggest part of what grounds me. For many individuals, their gender and sexuality will likely play a part in their identity, but there will be so much more that also establishes the core of their being and placement within society. But being transgender, it's easy to become fixated on your own transition, your own experience, and end up in a victim mentality. This doesn't help anyone, and I truly believe that a healthy and balanced path forward requires working to help LGBT individuals decenter identity as what makes up the core of their being. But instead, we are doing the exact opposite, and we are teaching a young generation that they should center their identity around diverse sexual and gender identities. And we can see the change happening. This spring, my school board reported that 39% of students identified within the LGBT spectrum. Some of those are certainly more passive identities, but we are also increasingly seeing LGBT individuals adopt identity as the core of how they position themselves. A few years ago, I had coffee with a young adult acquaintance. This individual was gay, and that's all he was. What I mean by that is that it was pretty evident that his entire life, social circles, hobbies, interests, and perception of himself was fixated around his gay identity. I actually asked him what else was going on besides being gay, and he literally told me, nothing. That was really his only focus in life, being gay. A few months later, he confided that he wasn't even sure if he was gay, but he couldn't give this up because his entire life and reputation was centered around his gayness. This is just one example of the dark side of over-centralizing an identity. So as we move into June, I want to remind everyone that it's okay if you don't feel like celebrating Pride Month, and it's okay if you're not too keen on the pride flag. Some people are going to want to celebrate these things, and so long as we allow space for difference of opinion, then we should all be able to get along just fine. So a few people have suggested that I myself seem rather fixated on LGBT matters, since it's all I post about on Twitter. Truth be told, being trans is actually a relatively small part of my identity, but my purpose in becoming a public voice has been to bridge the divide on identity politic matters, so I do try to keep the post on topic as much as possible. But in order to show that I do have personality beyond transgender matters, next week I'm going to do something entirely unrelated. We are going to make sushi together.